Welcome to the Society Pod, a podcast for entrepreneurs, marketers, and leaders. Here's your host, Jessica Yarmy.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Society Pod. My guest is taking his experience as a COO, as a president, as an advisor, as a captain, and he's using that experience to help owners, leaders, and teams unstick themselves and make decisions that they've been avoiding and helping them take focused action. This is going to be a good one. Welcome to the show, Darin Newbold.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. I'm excited to be here. The fun conversation that we briefly had while standing in line for a huge event. Just excited about this. This will be fun.
It's true. We did meet at the Dallas meetup. We should give Carson a shout out. We'll tag him when we post on LinkedIn. But as I was reading your LinkedIn, the thing that stuck out to me is how much of a diverse background you have, and then how you're using all of that diverse background to really do like a very specific and focused thing. How do you introduce yourself when you're meeting somebody brand new?
It's been a challenge, as you can imagine, with different pieces and different things. To try and simplify it, it's a little bit like what you had explained there is, simply put, I help leaders and teams make the decisions that they're either delaying or they're challenged with, or help them uncover and then adjust the patterns that they're living or the patterns that they're feeling that are getting in their way. That's really the long and short of it, is we live life in patterns. We grow up as children with these patterns, and then we carry these patterns on through the rest of our lives. That's something that we have, and for most of us, we never take the time to even consider what those are.
Very true. And I didn't know we were getting into a therapy session today, Darin, but we're going to go there. You coach under a company called Bold Solutions, and you have a framework that's called BoldGPS. And so tell me a little bit about the company and the coaching that you do, and then this framework and how it might assist someone who reaches out to you.
I've always had a passion for personal development, had wanted to be a professional speaker. I'm a huge fan of the late, great Zig Ziglar. I even joined the National Speakers Association for a time. In that conversation with them, they said, wow, you need to play on your last name. Newbold is my last name. So there, hence is the bold. Having been and worked in small to mid-sized businesses up to and including a Fortune 2 company, GE, at the time. So having this different background across it, that's where kind of bringing that all together becomes Bold Solutions. And really that's focused on helping businesses do the best that they can, help them obviously grow, solve problems, have great operations and those things. As I entered a stage where I've had a executive coach of my own for 13 plus years. The previous role that I had had as COO and EOS Integrator, when that came to an end, he said, Darin, this is the second time I'm telling you this. I think you could be a pretty good coach. And I said, hey, I think this is the time. So now here we are. Getting to the BoldGPS, as I started looking at how I wanted to really market myself and have something that was at least uniquely my own, that's when I really looked at the Enneagram as that map of who a person is. And if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, it's ancient wisdom. It's been around for a long, long time. And it breaks personality types into 9 different types. So using the Enneagram as a map of who a person is, we all have this map, but we are never really told how to read the map or move along the map. And so that's part of my certification as an Enneagram coach, is helping to read that map. And then as I was on that journey, I also landed and found the Purpose Factor, an assessment tool that brings out your purpose in 4 primary components: your natural advantage, your acquired skills, your pull passion, which the pull passion is very unique in the fact that for you, Jessica, that's the problem that you're most attracted to and most designed to solve. And then lastly, your origin story, which is how you get over challenges. Purpose Factor now becomes the lighthouse on the hill, a direction for which to go, and you now have a map. My role is, as coach, is to be the guide in, one, understanding yourself and those patterns that get in your way, and moving forward and living into your purpose.
So as you started this journey, like if I look back at your history and coming maybe especially from the Army and then in a Fortune 2 company, as you said, were you inspired to start this coaching practice because you've had great coaches along the way and you were fully supported in your own journey? Or are you really doing this because you feel like you could have been better supported even by those organizations that do a great job of building people and making sure people have a growth path?
I genuinely wish that either one of those was the actual story. I did have great leaders for the majority of my career. I've almost always had great leaders and people that I didn't know it, but yes, they were helping build this for me. But what I found is I ran into my own patterns. Ended up happening over and over, finding myself in having some levels of success and then that success going away and having to scrape up and do it again and again. As my best friend ended up telling me, he's like, hey, Darin, you probably ought to look in the mirror. And I did, and I saw the enemy, and the enemy was me. It was through my own kind of realizing, oh, I'm the only common denominator in this story over and over again. Something needs to change, and that's me. And it's that change and that kind of transformation of recognizing that there were patterns that weren't serving me as trying to be a leader, as trying to be the best version of myself. Those are the things that really started to put into place this journey into coaching.
There's so many external societal factors right now that are at play. I could really speak only specifically from a female's perspective. You have a lot of like women who really act from a place of, I'm not set up for success because of all of these external things. And as I'm hearing you talk about your journey, really is starting to, you say look in the mirror, but it's like take control of who you are and how you want to show up, despite how the world is showing up around you. What you're doing and how you're supporting, whether it's founders or whether it's teams, is just putting these frameworks in place and having it be something that they can act on and control. And I don't know if maybe that's a toxic way to say it because like control is not always a good thing. But I think sometimes you get stuck because you don't know or you feel like you can't control anything. And then as you're describing it, it really is like you actually have control of everything.
The only thing we have control over is really ourselves. It's our reaction, it's our thought processes, it's our inaction. It's interesting you bring up kind of male, female, and those. Several of my initial clients as I was starting this practice were females, and it happens in males, but it's much more, I think, prevalent with females, is that imposter syndrome. Being in that place of, I'm suddenly promoted, I'm suddenly now in charge. My first client, in her case, she was promoted, and now the person that she used to report to was now working for her. And it was kind of a weird dynamic, and she had to work through that. There's the overall dynamic. This is unfortunate. I don't like this, but it is what it is. If a man is forceful and takes initiative, they're a good guy. If a woman is forceful and takes initiative, well, they're often labeled less than flattering things. Part of working in a way with her was helping her recognize and knowing that, hey, there's times and there's ways for her to be forceful and be that leader that she needs to be, but also recognize that that can't cross the line of what someone else might be able to get away with that a female, unfortunately, in that environment is not going to.
How do you work with clients to determine where their misalignments might be? And then how do you work to get them better aligned so that they can reach their ultimate potential?
I use 2 assessments is really the base, and that's really the Enneagram, really understanding and helping them understand their type and what's involved there, and then the purpose factor as well. And that starts to paint a picture, but it's not the whole picture. Part of it then is as a person is understanding better who they are and kind of the proverbial good, the bad, the ugly, but also understanding their purpose and how that fits in, it takes a weight off. Okay, they can see themselves different, but now how do we get from A to B? You know, there's different things that we can bring in as both with the Enneagram just in itself, in some understanding that during times of stress, there are certain ways that a type is going to behave or take on behaviors and take on actions. Whereas if they're in a really great state and they're in a really happy state, then they can take on others in a very good way. But also there's some neuroscience involved in all of that that really starts to look at how is the brain behaving in these times of stress. In today's world, easily 90% that the stress or the threat that you're getting or having is not life-threatening. Yet, your brain and your body are going to react in ways that make it seem like it's life-threatening. Part of my job is helping with that pause and really helping to, one, first recognize that when there's that moment of stress or triggering, and all of a sudden whatever happens in your body happens, it's helping the person, one, first recognize it. We have to recognize that that's happening, and then be able to name it. Let's name that emotion. And then now, how can we reframe that in a way that's more effective for us going forward? There's a tool that my coach has used with me, and I've adopted it as well. It's a moniker called SCARF, SCARF. And each one of those has a name when someone is triggered. So if you think of, Jessica, for yourself, have you ever been in a situation where, for whatever reason, you're in a meeting and all of a sudden you felt very angry, very upset, just for the example here, can you describe briefly what that situation might have been and what you were feeling?
I often am in male-dominated spaces, and I've done very big things in my career. And I often am put in situations where either I need to just listen to the men at the table say their opinions, the conversation with like, hey, I've done this, not just once, but 400 times. I'm somewhat of a subject matter expert. I have to pitch myself in those moments. Definitely is triggering because you kind of want people to automatically like respect your experience, but sitting there and you're uncomfortable. I don't like to pitch myself in that way, but then I feel obligated to pitch myself in that way because I know what I'm talking about. And so there's like discomfort there.
So when you feel that discomfort, where in your body do you feel that?
Almost my entire body. It's like a tenseness. It's like a fight or flight, but I'm leaning toward fighting.
Exactly. So using SCARF, what we would look at is the S in SCARF is status. And that's your status in this group. Did you feel like your status in this group was threatened?
Yes.
Okay, one piece of it. All right, so there's status. The C is certainty, your ability to know what's going to come next and what's going to happen. Do you feel that that was also threatened? Now they're saying all these things, and now you're like, for the love of God, I got to tell my story again. I got to really do this. A is autonomy, is your ability to lead yourself and lead what you're doing and have your own control. And the R is relatability. This would be more if some of the men in this room, maybe you knew them well and did have respect for them, but yet they're following along with the rest of their buddies or the rest of the team, and they're not maybe sticking up for you. So you might feel that disconnect with the relatability with them. That could be it. The last one is fairness. As you examine that situation out of SCARF, there were several things that maybe it felt unfair. Maybe it felt your status. So it gives us a tool. We're now naming, okay, where in SCARF did that hit? And it's something that you can now do anytime this happens again. You can pause and say, well, hey, Darin was talking to me about this SCARF thing. I'm feeling all tense and fired up. And then maybe ask some different questions or a situation. Is there a way, given the situation you shared, is there a way you could reframe it that is focused on the men in the room, not on yourself, but from their perspective? Why do you think maybe they needed to hear your story again? Or what was that about?
I'll try to apply that to the next scenario. What am I able to control? You really don't have control over anything that's around you or any opinions that are happening around the table. You just have control over yourself and how you react to it.
Exactly. The question I would have is it possible that maybe the men in this room or in this situation, maybe they just didn't know your story well enough, or they hadn't heard it in a way that caused them to believe either you were the right fit or all the ins and outs. Whatever you needed to pitch or share, maybe they just didn't know it. Is that possible?
Sure, yeah.
Is that bad?
No, it's probable that there wasn't the understanding or the research done beforehand. We went into this podcast, I'm a planner, and so I expect everyone around me to have the same level of plan.
You said the magic word there. You expected. Expectations often get in our way because the other people around you, if they don't know your expectations, which the whole reason we have expectations is we're hopeful that the other people, well, they ought to know. It's interesting you bring this up because this was the exact scenario that the client that I was telling you about that she ran into, and she was very frustrated because she's dealing with high level, it's a consultative practice, and dealing with these partners in this company that she expects, hey, you ought to know how to do this. I don't have to hold your hand. Maybe you don't have to hold their hand, but as the leader, you do have to set the stage and you do have to set the marching orders and point them in the right direction. If you give them all of that and then they still mess up, okay, that's a different story. But those are the things that working with people and coaching them is helping them recognize that maybe you handled that situation with the men, you handled it fine, you were frustrated, but you handled it fine, you did the pitch, okay? Imagine for yourself, you did that, and then same day, an hour or two later, after a crummy drive across DFW in the traffic, you have another meeting that's like that, but let's ramp it up about 3x or 5x, and it's worse. And now they're calling into question your reputation. And at this point, you're kind of like, throw the gauntlet down. It's those behaviors, and it's that because we know it's going to happen. We already have seen it. It's how can we prepare ourselves and be in a place where those don't suddenly create a situation where maybe you burn a bridge. Maybe you say, well, hey, it's obvious you guys don't want me. I don't have time for you. I'm leaving. Whereas maybe the better answer is, it seems we have a difference here. Help me understand.
I think if you do kind of break things down, even using that example, you have the ability to back out from that and see it's triggering because it's part of a pattern. Like it's something that has happened, to your point, will continue to happen. And so then how do you work with people to reset, reestablish healthier patterns or healthier reactions to things that continually happen?
That's part of where that first piece is being able to recognize it, create at least a pause. Ideally, and I just recently learned this from a great friend of mine, where she talks about having a 90-second pause, that's ideal. Well, you're standing in front of a group or sitting with a group and you got to do it. Sometimes you don't have 90 seconds to say, hey, I need a TV timeout. Often that's more difficult. But being able to say, okay, I'm going to take 2 breaths and recenter yourself, that's the part of the control that we can have. I'll use me as the example. For those that are familiar with the Enneagram or whatever, I'm a type 7. So I'm the enthusiastic visionary, I'm the proverbial Peter Pan. Someday I'll figure out what I want to be when I grow up kind of thing. So those are the type 7s. But we're in what's called the thinking triad of numbers of types, and my go-to response is I think about stuff. And so when I'm triggered, I suddenly go into thinking about stuff because that's what I'm really, really good at. But I also have what's called a fixation. All types have a fixation, but my fixation is something that may shock you. It's kind of crazy because under normal circumstances, you think, in fact, you're going to love it. My fixation is planning. So you'd think, well, Darin, what's wrong with planning? I plan all the time. I plan this podcast. I plan this meeting. I did all this stuff. Yet, when we overuse it and we go into it and we sit there and all we're doing is thinking, planning, and we're in this cycle, in this loop, when we're sitting in that, we naturally will go to a negative interpretation. Your group of men, you're naturally going to interpret, oh, well, they see me as this weak woman. They see me as not valid and not knowledgeable enough. When in fact, that may have nothing to do with it. They may not even recognize that you are a woman in the room. They just missed out on whatever they needed to know. And the same thing for me. I'm sitting here going through the mental loops around planning and and thinking and just going over, and I'm bringing in, oh my gosh, this is horrible. This has happened. Gosh, Jessica hasn't called me back. She doesn't like me. I must have said something wrong. I only talked to her for 10 minutes, but gosh, what happened? I'm all over the place. And yet you had a computer challenge, and so we got started a little late. Didn't happen here. But those are the things that happen. When we know that happened, part of it is recognize it, pause it, and then be able to reframe it. That reframe is always going to take the picture of taking us out of it and focusing on the other person and focusing on the other situation. People don't think about us nearly as much as we think. So when you can focus on the other, you'll probably find that, oh yeah, had nothing to do with me.
You also really frame up your coaching like an unlock of action. How does someone end up kind of in this bottleneck? And then how does your coaching really end up supporting this like focused action endpoint?
Really great question. How does somebody get stuck? Many times it happens through a series of both things that happen to them in their life and personal life and their job. It can be, hey, I suddenly got a new promotion with a raise, and so more responsibility. They start finding, oh, wow, I don't know as much as I thought I did. I sold the boss on I could do this, and now I'm here, and wow, it's exponentially harder than I originally thought. The doubts seep in, and they start going through their own doubting. Maybe they have an initial failure of some variety. Maybe it's a challenge that then they're criticized on, and again, more doubts. Suddenly the market changes, they're laid off, and they're in that job hunt, and they're starting to find that, wow, they have lots of skills, but they seem to have skills that nobody else wants. Or they don't know how to tell people about their skills in such a way that they would want to hire them. That creates all of this doubt. A life event, a divorce, a child that has challenges. So that's the big piece. What I find is until you know yourself, it's hard to get out of your own way. The way for me, I read the books, I went to the seminars, I walked across fire barefoot 3 times. I was, gung-ho, hey, I could take on the world. Yet, in spite of that, I still found myself in these similar patterns. Then knowing myself, it's like, okay, I know these things are going to happen. And it doesn't mean I carry it as a badge of honor or anything like that. And it's definitely not an excuse. I can't go to a boss and say, well, hey, because I'm a type 7, I can only do this type of work. What I can say is okay, knowing that I'm a type 7, I can bring the best of who I am. I can know where my limitations are, work around or through them, or hey, maybe I can bring somebody else along and say, hey, you're really good at this piece. I'm not that great at it. Why don't you help me out? And then the last piece to bring to that, especially for an individual, knowing yourself and that purpose and having that purpose factor, because when you know your purpose and you know what fulfills you, suddenly leaning into that, it really makes your decision making a lot easier. I can lean into that. Life is life. There are still things that frustrate you. And as a solopreneur, yes, I still have to do marketing. Yes, I still have to get out there and do some things that may not be the funnest things for me, but yet we can still do them and know that it's serving the bigger purpose.
It starts with knowing yourself. There are so many tools. You could read through the tools, but it does come down to taking what you know and applying it so that you can function at a higher level. And maybe even specifically within a team, you want to be able to know yourself so that you could be a good team member to someone else. Your team can function at a high level because you understand who's good at what, who's called to what type of work. How does the self-exploration come to life in a team environment?
With the teams, it's just a little bit different, but where it works really well, the Enneagram tells the story, the good, the bad, the ugly. There are some boundaries and some guardrails we want when we're working with teams, because knowing a person's type, you could know their childhood wound. It's type-based. It's not, hey, this is exactly what happened when they were in their childhood, but it's the premise behind it. But you know the behaviors and the type that they move towards and take on the less than great behaviors of that type when they're in stress. Yeah, there's some guardrails around group work in saying, hey, we're going to focus on these areas and understanding who we are, and then bringing in the purpose factor. We're going to understand all of those because we really want to have that in there. But with a team, knowing a little bit more about how each type is going to think, how they naturally are going to look at things. Enneagram, the 9 numbers, there's a triad. So for instance, as I mentioned, I'm in the thinking triad of the 5, 6, and 7s. Thinking is kind of the first place we go. For the 8, 9s, and 1s, they're body types. So the first place they're going to go is they're going to want to go do something. And then for the 2, 3s, and 4s, they're the heart type, they're feeling. They're going to have all these feelings about it. And then they go to the thinking and doing, and each type is a little different in how they do that. But when you start to understand that and you realize we can take a group of people, put little thought bubbles above them that start to share a story of everybody's looking at the same plan. This is what we're going to do. But you can start to see one person is thinking, oh, wow, I don't know, that may not work. Here's all the things. That's our loyal skeptic, our type 6. Or you might have someone in there saying, well, man, I really love that idea. What are all the things we need to get done? I'm ready to jump on it. Give me that list of action items. And that's our awesome type 3 who's the achiever. And knowing these things in a group, and especially a leadership team group, helps to build trust, because when people think they know people, but then they don't, and they recognize you don't know what's going on inside their head. And it's just having those moments and having those times within a team to be able to build that and to create greater trust.
That's so interesting. I think more teams probably need to go through exercises like that to help them just better align with each other. It's one thing to be aligned within yourself with your purpose, but then aligned as a unit, like high function together. If there were like an individual or a team that was interested in connecting with you, like what is your process for someone to get started with you in a coaching capacity?
Whether it's an individual or a team, obviously there's a discovery call to understand the need and understand what they're wanting to do. I always want to make sure that, A, I'm the right fit, because there's nothing worse than them hiring someone and it's not the right fit. Minor side note in that, the other nice thing is the Purpose Factor and the Enneagram both are very supplemental to all of the other assessments that are out there. The Myers-Briggs, the DISC, the Strength Finders, the Working Genius, Colby, all of those. So it's very complementary to that. Working with me would be as simple as a discovery call to understand the need and then really figuring out the best way to fulfill that. On an individual basis, that discovery call would be, hey, helping understand what their goals are and what they want to do. And then either starting with something small and simple as kind of my starter map, BoldGPS starter map. It's 297, and it's both assessments, the Enneagram and the Purpose Factor, and then a 90-minute coaching session with me to kind of lay the foundation. And so that gets things started. Anyone on this podcast that hears this, I'm more than happy to discount that $50 for this podcast if someone's interested. And then after that, if one-on-one coaching makes sense, then try to ultimately work with the person on the scheduling, but ideally it's once a week. I prefer 90-minute sessions versus a 60-minute. Really love to be able to build that rapport and not have that clock ticking all the time in the back of your head. So 90 minutes on a weekly basis, and then we work out our payments from there.
Do you feel like being a visionary helps you be a really good coach for people?
I do, because I think I sit at kind of the crossroads between the visionary and, using EOS nomenclature, the integrator, because I did serve as an integrator. As a coach with a visionary, as my coach has told me, my meandering career path across many different areas and across a lot of different things, it's taking all of that experience, knowledge, bumps, bruises, even tragic crashes, and bringing that forward and saying, okay, I've lived some stuff. How can I help you live your best stuff and maybe provide a little guidance to avoid a few of those bumps?
And that is what it's all about, for sure. The fewer bumps, the better. Close us out with, like, if you weren't doing this, if you weren't coaching and kind of helping people identify their purpose and how to best function through their purpose with alignment, what would you be doing?
That's a fun question. If I can wave a magic wand and do anything, I'd probably be a Formula One race car driver, but I'm a little old for that and definitely a little fluffier than I could fit in the cars. But that would be one of them. What I've always said, following like Zig Ziglar, being a professional speaker and having the opportunity to share stories and share moments that impact others on a stage, I think that would be a blast. As I had a conversation with him and several other speakers, it's not all standing on a stage, because you have to go and get those opportunities to be on the stage. And that's the part that's not quite as fun as then being on the stage. Definitely love to travel and love to play some pickleball as well. I'm trying to get a little bit better at that. So I do a lot of those fun things.
That sounds all amazing. And thank you for sharing everything that you did here on the Society Pod stage. You did have a podcast at one point. Maybe you start your podcast back up, start your own stage, and then you can say whatever you want to.
Thank you for bringing that up. I already have. The podcast isn't out yet, but I have started a collaboration with another Enneagram expert that he has written a book as well as a TED Talk, and his book is called Taming Your Money Monsters. Basically, it's using the Enneagram, the 9 types, to help people understand how they interact with money and why and how we get into trouble with our own personal finances and even company finances and what that looks like. So we're bringing that forward. The podcast is going to be called Monsters and Lighthouses. Very excited about it. We've just begun recording. Thank you, Jessica, for letting me share that real quick. I appreciate that.
You heard it here first, and I will link the Monsters and Lighthouses pages in the show notes. Hopefully you have it live by the time we're pushing this recording out. But thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you for sharing everything that you did here on the Society Pod.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Society Pod.